Let's get some analysis now. Joining me here in the studio is Dr. Pradeep Philip. He's the head of Deloitte Access Economics. Pradeep, great to see you. $8.6 billion going out in 6 months. Inflation above the RBA target band. Are you worried about that?
Kieran, yes, we are. If you look at the budget papers themselves show that inflation will spike and then come down, so it's temporary. It shows that the economy is going to grow, consumption's going to grow, jobs will grow. So the question really is, why a 1% of GDP stimulus over the next 6 months when there's a real issue in the budget, which is Australia's poor productivity performance? And that's the real issue that we need to see addressed.
So in terms of the inflationary risk, though, are you worried that it could see the RBA go harder and quicker? That
is always the risk. The risk is that you stimulate the economy too much at a time when the economy is growing, where unemployment is already low, and that puts the pressure on the Reserve Bank to go harder and faster.
And so you're giving with one hand, taking with the other.
And that's the risk. And we'll only find that out in a few months' time, unless the Reserve Bank moves any quicker.
But on the politics of it, do you get it in the sense that obviously it's biting right now, isn't it, particularly fuel prices?
Look, that's true. But, you know, the fuel excise cut, if it's to address cost of living, there are other things that we can do that address cost of living in a more structural sense and that drives reform. But clearly, this is an important issue for the government, and that's why we've seen it reflected in the budget.
One of the things that I mentioned last night on our coverage, but I think is interesting if we look at the medium term, is that a couple of the decisions made by Josh Frydenberg might actually work to Labor's advantage if they win the upcoming election. That's an if, obviously we don't know if they do, but if they do, they don't have to move to end the business asset write-off. That's already scheduled to end under the government's plans. The low and middle income tax offset, again, scheduled to end. And also this excise. It's on a timeline, 6 months. So all of those things will come off, that Labor doesn't have to undertake that sort of repair itself.
True. Look,
if it wins.
Both sides of politics, whoever wins is going to face this. And the real question is, will whoever wins have the stomach to put the fuel excise up by 50% in the next, in 6 months' time? I think that's the risk we face of baking in some of these temporary measures, because what we actually do need is to get some good fiscal repair going over a period of time, but in a way that actually drives productivity and investment in the economy.
Do you believe that the economic fundamentals are still strong, despite the concern you have over inflation?
Absolutely. We have great fundamentals. We've got a growing economy, we've got jobs growth, but then, Kieran, if you look at the global environment, there are uncertainties in the global environment that we've got to be careful about. And so we need to get on with our task in Australia of building growth for the future so that we can deal with the uncertainties that the rest of the world throws at us.
And is that skills piece that you referred to earlier?
That is skills, not just about jobs for today, but what about the reforms that we need and the skills we need for the new economy of the future? They're the sort of things that we need to do. We've got the big challenge of climate change, for instance, and that is actually a big investment ask on the economy. We can drive incentives to drive investment right across this country to set us up for long-term economic growth.
Well, one of the areas that is glaring in terms of the need for that sort of capacity is, cyber.
Yes.
If the government's going to boost the Australian Signals Directorate
yes.
to the tune of, $10 billion, the people have got to come from somewhere.
Look, and that's a great thing, right? We do need to boost our cybersecurity, our resilience of our businesses and our economy. And so we will see a skills demand from overseas, but also to train our own here in Australia.